All right. Hello. I'm back. I actually have done a couple of recordings this week, but they were all screwed up audio, so they never actually made it up to YouTube. So that's just part of learning, right? So we're gonna do another reaction. Just so you guys know, I eventually would love to start doing real interviews. That is the goal of this channel. But I'm trying to get started with a at least setting the tone, some reaction videos and things like that, setting the tone, so that when I start reaching out to folks to try to do interviews, they have a sense of who I am, where I come from. And so I'm guessing the first 20, 30 videos in this channel are going to be this style of thing. As I perfect the process, and then hopefully eventually we start to get to some interviews. I'm going to go close that door right there because it's driving me crazy. And it's right in the field of view. So, and eventually I'm gonna have I'm thinking I'm gonna put like a green screen and see how that goes. Anyway, all right. So today I'm gonna react to one of these Jubilee videos. I have never watched any of these. I've heard about them, but I've actually never seen them, and I have a feeling they're going to drive me crazy. And we'll kind of try to pick apart and find, maybe where there are good conversations happening and where there are bad conversations happening. Put up the wrong put up the wrong thing. Let's see. I want to go and do this. I still haven't perfected. For some reason, when I try to go to full screen, I lose the actual video. So we're just gonna try to do it on this. This sort of partial, mostly full screen here, and hopefully it won't be too annoying. And I'm going to actually try to make it even a little bit bigger. Let's see how this goes. All right, so this video is titled 20 Trump supporters take on one progressive, right? And this is, all right, this is going to be fun.
What's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Do you think that's better for Americans in general?
Okay, gotta stop already. I just want to remind everybody that there is this is infotainment, and when they do these sort of man on the street kind of things, they're not always looking for the best representative of a particular point of view. They're looking for maybe the most outrageous or the most insane. I'm shocked to hear this woman. They picked someone who's actually defending white nationalism. Okay, here we go. I'm going to try to focus more on the dialogue, less on the ideas themselves. But obviously, that's an idea that I don't that I do disagree with. So anyway.
Like xenophobic nationalism is better.
We should have a culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture.
I doubt she knows
what the culture is.
I doubt she knows what xenophobic is.
We have a dominant culture.
I mean, look, I got to be honest with you. You and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. Hi, I'm Sam Seder, host of the Majority Report, and today I am surrounded by 20.
By the way, that's actually always, if you're in dialogue with somebody where you just don't know how to find any common ground, it's really okay to say, hey, I just disagree with you, and respectfully, and let's not continue to talk about it. I think that's always fair.
Conservatives. My first claim is Trump's attack on DEI hides his real goal, which is to give corporations more power.
All right, I hate to pause it before we even start, but I like to point out that we're already set up for failure here because Sam, is it Seder or Seder? I'm not sure. Sam Seder is already kind of asserting something that isn't in the realm of fact, right? It's in the realm of, there's, barring Trump saying this is my real goal, which maybe he has in various different ways, but it's always going to be likely a topic that's open to interpretation because it's about somebody else's intention rather than their like stated goals or actions, right? I love this. This is like some sort of Survivor or something. They're all, I guess, whoever gets to the chair first gets to argue.
I think I have a slight issue with the back end of the premise. I guess Trump's attacks on DEI being a real goal to, give corporations more power. I'd rather center the conversation around the democratic, especially as conservatives, the issues that people have with DEI and why I believe Trump would, want to support the issues that, people are voting for him for.
I mean, I'm talking about his whole
Right.
attack on DEI. It's actually DEIA,
Sure.
right? You know that.
Right.
In government agencies. The A being for accessibility.
Right. Yeah, and I think the attack on DEI isn't an attack on people's protections. It's on the other end of the spectrum, right? Wanting to end DEI doesn't want to end protections for someone being disabled, someone being inaccessible to get into a job. It rather wants to de-incentivize corporations to push them to hire these people on unfair bases, right?
Okay, but DEIA
Right.
is not about quotas or anything like that. It is about protections for people within these organizations, or to make sure that you have different communities that
Right.
have the opportunity to apply to these things.
Right.
So it can mean, within government agencies, it means things like, let's pay interns so that not only wealthy people can have their kids do internships in these agencies.
And-
or let's put out notices around different parts of town,
Sure.
metaphorically speaking, so that people know this job exists.
This is where it begins, but this isn't the ultimate goal that conservatives have an issue with. Conservatives don't have an issue with trying to spread job applications to poorer communities.
Well,
so
then
everyone
why
gets
rescind DEIA requirements in government agencies?
Because the problem with DEIA is there may not be like perceived actual number quotas, but that's what it devolves into, and especially with
Do
corporations,
you have
it
the
devolves.
evidence of that?
I mean, sure, we can look at corporations that are government agencies that are hiring people on not true proper bases. We can even look
Well,
at.
I mean,
we can even look at
do you
the
have
DNC's.
any evidence that that's happening?
Yeah, even the DNC's nomination of Kamala as president this year, there was no reason to nominate Kamala as she wasn't democratically selected. She wasn't. She didn't go through a single primary.
Well,
none
wait
of
a
these
second.
things.
So you're saying that Kamala was the vice president of the United States after
Yes.
the president drops out 2 months before the convention. You think?
Okay, they're clearly getting sidetracked here, and right before he made the Kamala Harris argument, I was kind of, so my initial instinct with this guy is that he's actually trying to make a good faith attempt at an argument here, which I think is reasonable to propose. That Sam Seder is saying, here is what the intention of DI programs is. And what this fellow was trying to say was, yeah, that's their intention, and we don't have a problem with the intention. We have a problem with what actually happens when they're implemented. And he struggled to find like actual facts and to like back that up, and Cedar kind of steamrolled him. So, I think he was trying to make a good faith argument, not doing it particularly well. But I can't really criticize his approach there. I think Sam Cedar like tried to steamroll him, which maybe shows that he's more about kind of steamrolling here. The bringing in the Kamala Harris thing is like anytime you switch from talking about an idea or a concept to talking about people, what politicians, you're just asking. It's just, there you go. There's no aligning there.
That's a DEI
She wasn't
hire?
Every presidential nominee is democratically selected to be the nominee for that
Do
party,
you realize
except
there were
for
not
Kamala
even
Harris.
primaries prior to 1972
Well,
in
sure,
the
Yeah.
but
Democratic
this
Party?
isn't before 1972.
Well, I understand, but what did
This
you
is,
think you were going to run primaries in those 2 months?
Well,
I mean,
sure.
Joe Biden should have dropped
But
out
even
3 years
even
ago, as far as I'm
before,
concerned.
well, sure, but even before when Kamala was running in primaries, she
Okay.
wasn't the next man up. None of this. She wasn't the next person.
Well, she was the vice president.
Right, of course, but
Yeah.
she wasn't
That
in
tiny
primaries.
detail. But
Right,
listen,
well,
aside from, I would have might have wanted a different
Absolutely.
candidate as well. But that has nothing to do with Trump rescinding orders that basically say you need to search for a wide range of candidates, not necessarily give any different benefits, but you need to make sure different communities have access to the awareness of this job. You need in your office accessibility for people who have physical handicaps.
Sure.
If you have folks who identify as as trans, you need to make it at least hospitable and not. This is all non-discriminatory stuff. That's what this is all about.
Uh-oh, he's mad. He's mad.
Even conservatives don't have issues. Conservatives don't have issues
That's
with
what
making workplaces.
the whole DEI
Yes.
apparatus within our
It is-
government
okay.
was a function of doing exactly
It
what I
is-
said, had nothing to do with quotas.
It
or
is
even
unfortunate
affirmative
that
action.
those things get taken out, and there might not have been specific.
Oh, I see.
Trying to take
I see down here in the left, they're showing you the number of red flags he's got. So this kid's about to get yanked. I bet. All right, let's watch
It's
this.
trying to take out people getting jobs that don't deserve those jobs. People getting pushed into
There is
positions
no
they have no
evidence.
qualification.
There is no evidence of what you just said happening in these government agencies.
That's not true at all. I mean, we're not allowed to sit here and have notes and numbers to pull up for you. You can't,
Give me one example.
You can't ask me to pull up numbers when I'm not able to sit here and look on a computer for you, but these are the
How would
problems.
you-
There we go.
Conservatives-
There we go. He's gone.
Sorry, you've been voted out. Please return to your seat.
So all things considered, this wasn't too bad. I actually think this kid was doing a really good job of trying to make real good faith arguments. Now, obviously, it would have been nice if he could have remembered some examples. I think it's a little disingenuous for Sam to like actually suggest that there's no evidence because listen, for any position that you have, there's always evidence, right? So always and never. There's some statement about always and never and why you should never use them, right? So, I think that was a little disingenuous, but ultimately, I think he's right to say, hey, like you have this concern that people who aren't qualified for the job are getting hired over people who are qualified for the job. And that might be a reasonable concern, but you need to actually have like evidence and data to like validate that your focus on that concern is even if the concern is valid, it actually may be happening so much more less than you think that you're over prioritizing, right? Like there's, sure. Anytime you have a mandate that's DEI related, there is a risk that there is a loser, right? You always want it to be win-win, but there's a risk that is a win-lose and that there's a loser in that scenario. And I think that is valid to be concerned about, but we have to be careful in allowing blowing a concern out of proportion and allowing it to stop what could ultimately be a good policy. Now, I'm not commenting on the specifics of this policy here. I just think that would be a reasonable argument. All right. And actually, I just realized this video is so long. I'm going to, I think I'll chop it up and like keep going. So I'll come back on the next one and we'll talk about this next conversation. Or actually, we'll keep it going until we swish assertions, right? Like, I think that may be the way to go here. Let's see how this guy goes. Because we're still talking about DI hiding his real goal.
Okay, so I think the roots issue with DEI isn't what the previous gentleman was trying to point. Conservatives aren't necessarily have issues with those things like accessibility to people who might need help. The issue is, and I kind of referred to this before, when you have agencies and systems, what tends to happen when you have government overreach, big government, is that agencies and systems get abused. And I think unequivocally, DEI was heavily abused in practice. It was great in theory. It's idealistic, which is sure is fine, that a lot of people can get behind.
He's going to run into the same kind of challenges that the previous gentleman
But
did.
it was abused in a lot of ways. When you have actors, like we're in California right now, when you have actors, white male actors who are being told, we do not want white men, we're not gonna cast any white men, we only want this particular kind of gender, race, right? That is an abuse of a system. It's no longer fair, but more about just perpetuating one aspect of, visual compelling aspects, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is
I want to comment on what the substance of what he's saying, which is there really is a thing going on, like with Hollywood and media, and maybe that is an attempt to bring stories of gay and trans and other lives, other races and ethnicities more into the common storytelling, and you could see that as a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a thing that is happening. But I think it's wrong to project what's happening in art and media, because government's not mandating that. That is the storytellers themselves making choices. Even if maybe one studio does, it might be it's still a private actor or a private decision, right? So like I think a lot of the reactionary DEI stuff is more of a reaction to media than it is to actually real experience out in the world of people getting unfairly selected, which already just puts this whole conversation in a realm of more based on perception than fact and reality.
companies are going to say, well, we want to look the most diverse.
Okay, well,
and what that is it's moral grandstanding. It's that because we have more black women, we sell better soda. Like that.
I got you.
That is not.
Well, that's getting a little far afield from what Trump's DEI orders are. But I can tell you, as somebody who was a sitcom actor in the 90s, I would walk into a room and everybody I would see would look like me. And I was doing a second position, which doesn't even exist anymore, where you do 2 pilots a year. And I was looking around basically every part of television when I was a kid. I was centered in some fashion. It was either this is about my mother, or this is about my father, or someone like me was centered. So, we can argue as to whether or not Hollywood is overcorrected in some fashion. But on a governmental level, the DEIA directives that agencies were following for the past 4 years is nothing. I don't know what you mean by abuse on it, but there is no.
Yeah, I totally agree with Sam here making that distinction as the argument of whether media has gotten overly PC and concerned with this correction, which is valid, is totally separate from what Trump is doing here.
No evidence that it was an affirmative action program in those.
And calling out that using words like abuse, I do think is more so than the previous gentleman, assuming malintent, and I always think that is I don't usually accept that.
Instances, it was about anti-discrimination. You cannot discriminate against these people, and you want to open up opportunities for a broad swath of people. Again, the internship is like one of the most material things that exist there, where the idea that you need to pay interns. And that's important because you want low-income people to have the same sort of like opportunities to see these things.
Okay, I'm going to skip forward. Let's just, if you want to watch the whole thing, put the link to the original video. My overall comment is that I actually think the previous gentleman, while he struggled to back his arguments up, I think had a more good faith argument of saying it's not the intent, it's how it's implemented. Where I think this fellow seems to be saying that the intent has become abuse, which I don't think that is right either. Though let's Come on, 6. This kid must be doing all right. Nobody wants to vote. Okay. All right. Let's see what this guy is. This guy was sitting over there getting all hot and bothered by the discussion. So let's see. All right. And I like that Sam is shaking their hands. I think he's being very polite and. Oh.
Hi.
Yes, there.
How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Okay, when it comes to DEI, essentially, if a person was not racist, he would hire someone regardless, right? So why would we need a policy to protect a person if we've moved past racism? So would you consider yourself racist?
Wait, are you suggesting we've moved past racism?
Would you consider yourself racist?
I consider myself, and sometimes I think we all practice like some form of, white supremacy. I think actually like we all do to some degree.
Well, I'm glad that you're saying that. So I guess going to the LGBT topic, it seems like it's very prevalent for you as an issue.
Well, it seems like a big issue. I mean, the Republican Party spent literally hundreds of millions of dollars demonizing trans people.
Well, the reason why they've done something like that, and I think you're misconstruing the narrative, they haven't demonized them. They simply want protections back for their own children, because children are being stripped away from
Who's
their
their
parents.
own children? Wait,
Parents?
children are being stripped away from their parents?
Yes, due to AB 954, they've now included gender identity as a premise to remove and strip parental rights for children who.
I believe it's only California. I don't know that this is happening all over the country. I think you need to validate that.
Who maybe they are rejecting their gender ideology.
So, but you'd be okay with parents who agree with their children's doctors to provide gender-affirming care?
I do not agree with that. Do you?
Oh,
I believe that parents and doctors can make those decisions with the kids.
If
of
a
course.
child can't smoke, drink, or have sex before the age of 18, they should not be able to consent to a sex change. Now, in
Well,
terms of a
I don't know that
DEI
they can,
initiative, the reason why there's military bans on trans women and trans men is because they do not have the ability to cooperate at a mental capacity when they're constantly undergoing hormone treatment, as well as depression pills, as well as different mood stabilizer pills. And so when you go out to combat, do you really think you're going to bring an ice cooler pack with your, whether that be hormone estrogen or whatever it may be, while you're about to shoot someone of the opposing
Well,
war?
the executive orders that Trump gave were DEIA orders that had to do with agencies that have nothing to do with the military.
Yes, they do. Yes, they absolutely do.
yeah. I think we're getting really far afield. Like, I actually. I can't decide what I think about this conversation yet. Let's go.
FDA, they just revoked the ability of the Air Force to teach Air Force members about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Well,
like,
we're not-
what are we talking about here?
Okay, well,
Honestly, like they're rewriting history.
So this is
Well,
a good,
that's your point.
actually, this is a good moment to kind of call out. Like this definitely happens a lot when you're having conversations with your friends, where you're both trying to have a different conversation, and that really makes it hard to like come to any sort of point of communication or understanding. I think Sam really wants to focus on the DEI side and some of the things that Trump is doing specifically that is, I don't know if he thinks it's giving corporations more power. I don't know. I'd have to hear Sam's case for that. But Sam wants to talk about Trump's policies on DEI in the government and corporations, and this guy wants to talk a little bit more about, or the person he's talking to. They don't give us names, so we don't know what to call them. He's talking a little bit more about sort of the cultural attitudes about trans, and that anything that isn't in support of trans is dismissed as, somehow transphobic, but in fact there may be good reasons for it. I'm not steeped in this issue of trans in the military and parents. I don't have kids. I try to listen on this topic more than speak. I think it's very sensitive, and I think there are good concerned. I mean, the thing about children and being 18, I think there is a non-transphobic case for children not making life-altering decisions before the age of whatever we decide the age of consent is, military or otherwise. And I think I think there's also transphobic reasons to support that policy as well. And so it becomes tricky to talk about this stuff without a deep level of trust between people, where that person is making an honest argument and not a transphobic one.
Perspective, right? But at the end of the day, if a person
Tuskegee Airmen, we can all agree,
Okay,
existed,
just
right?
listen to this.
Yeah, and what I hope Sam does here is I really hope he can kind of point out that they're not really talking about the same thing, but and maybe try to either steer it back, or I don't know. We'll see how it does.
If you were racist, right, and you were an employer, and if you wanted to absolutely be racist and exercise that, you would. I think DEI sort of prevents people from seeing the reality. If a person truly wanted to hire you based on your intellect, based on your skill set, they would. DEI essentially provides tax cuts. For the end of the year, when you create your tax returns, they give you a tax credit for hiring someone who is black or a person of color. I don't know if you knew that.
In these agencies?
In agencies and private
In government
businesses.
agencies, they don't get tax cuts for hiring people.
Sam's kind of sidestepping here. Like, I don't know, he wants to keep the conversation to agencies, but he set the whole thing as corporations. I've personally seen how there is a bit of a, corporations can adopt DEI policies without actually creating a DEI environment, if that makes sense. And I'm not sure it's a good reason not to have DEI, though. So, like, I think that, I think you could hear what this fellow said and make the opposite case, which is, hey, maybe we need more DEI if they're just using it for the tax breaks and it's not actually doing the trick. So I think it could go either way.
And the other thing I wanted the other thing I want to
discrimination.
the other thing I want to kind of state here is that I've realized that a lot of the times with the liberals is that you guys push for example, for DEI and people of Latino or Hispanic descent. And a lot of the times what you don't realize is you're actually doing more harm than good by putting them in positions where you make them believe that it's based on the color of their skin. It's based on
DEIA does not is not.
It's based on merit. DEI emphasizes color, skin color,
No,
physical
it
attributes.
says that the people who work in your agency, it's about anti-discrimination
Discrimination against what?
against people who may have different cultural mores, may have different.
But that's irrelevant to a job, right? It should be based on merit. And that is the emphasis
People
here.
get hired as a merit, but if the
Not
DEI,
if you get a
if the
tax
DEIA, I'm talking about Trump's rescission of
If
these
you
orders
received a
on
tax
these
cut as
agencies.
an employer, wouldn't you hire a person of color?
Dude,
If you could pay them less?
listen, we're talking about government agencies that do not get tax cuts.
Wait a minute. So Sam's being a little disingenuous here because he started this with his claim, which is up there in the top left, which is to give corporations more power. So I do think it's fair to talk about the way this functions in corporate America, and I actually think this gentleman is doing a reasonably good job now at really honing in on what the unfairness that he basically is trying to say that when there's a financial incentive to hire based on race, you will hire based on race, and therefore it becomes not about merit, and it undermines the people who actually get those jobs, whether they merited it or not. So I think that can be a good faith discussion to have. I don't know, like anything else. I don't know how whether I think that is a true argument or not. But I think it's a reasonable argument to make. I would like to see Sam at least acknowledge that. And when he tries to shift back to the Trump policies and the agencies, I think he could at least acknowledge that, hey, gentleman, person, you are making a reasonable argument, but it's not the goal of this conversation. And I'd love to like maybe set that argument aside and move. But I think he's trying to switch the conversation in such a way that this person looks like they're talking, that they don't understand or something like that. So
government agencies.
They don't.
No,
Yes, they do. They absolutely do.
wait, what I missed.
Agencies
I'm gonna go back.
that do not get tax cuts. They don't. Government agencies.
They don't.
No,
Yes, they do. They absolutely do.
I'm talking about
Every
parts of-
private and public sector gets tax cuts when you hire a person of color.
Government agencies don't pay taxes. Government agencies operate are funded by the government.
That is not true. That is not true. And you know what? I think
Interesting.
the whole juxtapose of this entire conversation.
What month is this?
This is January.
Okay, so we can agree on that. The
Nice.
FDA
Nice.
does not pay taxes. It does not get a tax cut because it doesn't pay taxes.
But that's not really the point here, to be honest. And the interlocutor here, what I don't know, call him, I call him or they or them. We'll pick a name. Ralph. Ralph. I think it's not really the point that they don't pay taxes. They still have incentives, right? Every organization anywhere has incentives. And in the private sector, that incentive might be tax cuts or grants. In the public sector, that incentive takes the place of headcount or budget. And so I think the getting myopic on tax cuts here is more about, and this is a great, I'm going to call this out. This is something that happens. We often, when we are on the defensive, we often pick something that we know we can validly disagree with that the other person is saying that doesn't really address the spirit of what that other person is saying. And I think that when we do that, we kind of create an impasse, right? So
DEIA
Ralph's about to get voted out. He's one vote.
forces them as an agency to say if you have a job opening, you must do your best efforts to make sure that every
I like that. I
part
love
of
me a
society.
buzzword. You must do your best effort. I love that buzzword.
Okay,
Because
pause.
you feel like you have.
All right, now Ralph's being a little sarcastic, and that never helps. And I think
You're pressured to.
Yes.
You shouldn't be pressured to hire someone based on skin color.
No, not to hire someone on skin color, but put up notice about that the job exists. Make sure that you put it in different communities so that you have as wide an application pool as possible.
And therefore you get
All
tax
right.
cuts.
All right, return
At
to your
the end
seat.
of the year when you file taxes, you get tax cut for hiring someone who speaks a
Please
different
return to your
language or
seat.
different skin color.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Nice. So I think that conversation was actually, I don't know. I actually think that Ralph, the person who I'm calling Ralph, because I don't know their name because Jubilee won't give us names. I think he did an okay job of getting Sam into a place of not knowing, being kind of flustered and not knowing how to argument, or not knowing how to respond. But I think that is like what I would say. And this is good to observe too when you're out there in the world talking to people and seeing people talk to each other. That it is, there is. Winning an argument is not the same as coming to an understanding, right? And it doesn't accomplish the same people for for the people around you, right? So in this case, Ralph, I think he did a good job of like maneuvering and kind of avoiding Sam's attacks and getting some good hits. And you might look at this and go, yeah, he did pretty well. He held up against Sam. Great, he did. But did he actually move the discussion forward? I don't really think so. I think he missed opportunities to clarify with Sam what he was trying to say, that it wasn't really just about taxes, it was about incentives. And then I think Sam obviously missed opportunities to say, sure, there's always the risk of creating perverse incentives, and we should be on guard for that. But we should also maybe not let the fear of perverse incentives create us from trying to do good things. If I'm Sam, that would be kind of what I would probably argue, or at least move in that direction. They got kind of hung up on this agencies paying taxes, which I think Sam is right. I just don't. It's just, I mean, they might pay sales tax when they buy things, but they really probably shouldn't. They should have a government exemption. So they really shouldn't be paying any taxes. So I agree that Ralph was totally wrong, but I think agencies still have incentives, and that was the important. And I want to challenge everybody, I think, to have really healthy discussions. It's really important to not get hung up on, we all make mistakes, we all misspeak, we all have wrong ideas or have our facts wrong. And sometimes when we're obsessed with like beating somebody in an argument, we think that the argument is about facts, and it really isn't. Like facts are these really, like, yes, they facts can't be made up. They're a real thing. But it's sort of like looking at atoms. You don't really know, it's hard to put them in context until, you see what molecule they're a part of. And so facts, while are specific things that can be right or wrong, very few arguments are arguments about facts. They are arguments about putting facts together, and in what way do you put them together to bring meaning to the world, and understanding that difference, and not really getting hung up on arguments of fact when the real disagreement is not about a fact. It's about some bigger fabric of a narrative. All right, we're going to pause here, and I will come back and do a second round of this for anybody who's interested. All right. Thank you for stopping by. I guess I am Ron Burgundy. This is not quite Burgundy, but